Right, aside from the Scott Morrison factor, a good part of the reason why Labor won the election in May was because Anthony Albanese was able to persuade voters that he was safe change. And part of that was promising to keep the former government's legislated tax cuts. Well, now Labor's having an internal debate about whether or not to break that promise. Now, there are 2 points to be made here. First, we're talking about a legislated tax cut for people on the top marginal rate, so $200,000 a year. Now, that's a good wage. If you've got dependents and live in a capital city, that's not rich, is it? Thanks to bracket creep, the 45% top tax rate that originally applied to around 2% only of taxpayers will soon apply to the top 5% of taxpayers. And tax at that rate's a serious disincentive for people to make the effort and earn more. And it's not like the government can be trusted anyway to spend our money wisely. The second point, probably even more important, is that governments should keep their commitments. And this was a commitment that Labor repeatedly made during the campaign.
We voted for the legislation of the tax cuts, and we said clearly and explicitly we would keep those legislated tax cuts because people deserve that certainty going forward. And we're going to ensure that there's certainty going forward about what the tax system looks like. We're committed to delivering what we said we would. And I've said on the stage 3 tax cuts that they've been legislated. People are entitled to operate on the basis of that certainty. We inherited it, and I've said that we haven't changed our position.
Because no one really trusted Labor to cut taxes rather than increase them, Labor MPs and candidates repeatedly asked that question if they would keep the tax cut commitments, and routinely, well, you heard the now Prime Minister, they vowed they would. That was until now, with the ACTU and a whole lot of Labor backbenchers calling for the tax cut to be repealed. Sadly, even one Liberal, the politically confused Tasmanian backbencher Bridget Archer, who was also greenlighting the Labor government to break its word. Now, honestly, Bridget, bugger off. I don't think even the Liberal left supports you anymore. And what's more, I think you misunderstand the economics here, as does the Labor Party. By the middle of 2024, when this legislation is due to come into force, we may well be in the midst of a recession. So a bit of fiscal stimulus might be useful. Now, in any event, you can't use fiscal circumstances now today to justify any decision that's almost 2 years away. As a Liberal, Bridget, lowering tax should be in your DNA, and commitments are just that. You don't break them. Voters never forgave Julia Gillard after this.
There will be no carbon tax under the government I lead.
And those who know it know that this Prime Minister needs to be careful that these tax cuts aren't his Gillard moment.